Welcome in, guys. It is another episode of Happy Hour Hoops. And pretty soon, starting tomorrow, we're going to have an abundance of win or go home games because it's March Madness season. Usually an NBA podcast, but we'll be talking all college hoops this episode. Donovan Holden, as always, joined by Jake Micah. And today from Trainwreck Sports, we have a college basketball expert, Stevie, at Richie Stevenson on Twitter, a guy named Steve. Stevie, how you doing? Glad to have you on.
I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk March Madness. We missed out on the tournament last year, so I'm more than excited to have it back this year. I've been staring at my bracket for the past 3 nights.
As you should be. I'm sure everyone's looking at their brackets, and we're going to get into all the bracket madness in just a second. But first, you guys must know that Happy Hour Hoops and Trainwreck Sports is brought to you by Manscaped. They're the best in men's grooming below the belt. I myself have a lawnmower 3.0, which is one of their best razors. I suggest all you guys go over to manscaped.com, use the code word TRAINWRECK at checkout. You will receive 20% off and free shipping. But let's get into some college hoop, guys. It starts tomorrow. The madness here.
Bro, I didn't realize how excited I was for March Madness until watching the bracket unfold Sunday and just listening to Greg Bumwell's voice just soothe my soul, dude. I was like, wow, I didn't realize how much I missed it. But yeah, we're excited. We're gonna go through the whole bracket here. We brought Stevie along because Stevie has been on Trainwreck Sports, just fucking killing college basketball and making me money for the last couple weeks.
Pumping out articles.
Pumping out everything. So go check all those out. He broke down the brackets, all the regions on the brackets on Trainwreck Sports. So go check those articles out. Go get this information and this what we're having him on here for, and for the rest of this weekend with all the stuff we're going to be doing. Keep it locked on to our Twitter account at Happy Hour Hoops 1, and as always our YouTube page, because we're going to be coming at you with stuff all weekend long covering the games, man. I'm so excited for March Madness. So let's get into it. We're going to start off with the West region. West is best, and the number 1 seed, not a surprise at all, number 1 overall seed, the Gonzaga Bulldogs. For me, with Gonzaga, honestly, bro, they just seem like the team of destiny at this point.
Yeah.
And after last year, they just kind of seemed like they got fucked over, and it was inevitable that this year they were going to come back with a vengeance.
Yeah, I mean, don't bet against Gonzaga, at least to the Final Four. They have probably, in my opinion, the best starting 5 in all of college basketball with no weakness. Jalen Suggs, an NBA prospect, leads the guards, and then you got in the front court Drew Timme and Corey Kispert, who they can do everything. Everyone on Gonzaga, they can pass, they can shoot, they can dribble, they don't make mistakes, and their offense is significantly better than everyone else. They average 92 points a game, which in college basketball is unheard of. They shoot 55% from the floor, which again is an unheard of stat. And then everyone's talking about they haven't played anybody in 2 months. Well, they played Iowa, killed them in the non-conference schedule, beat Virginia by, I believe, 22, scored 98 on Virginia, who is known for the slow you down, grind you down defense. Couldn't do anything against Gonzaga. They beat Kansas. West Virginia gave them a good fight in the first half, stormed back and beat them. I'm not betting against the Bulldogs. I really do think they're the team of destiny this year, and there's nothing that they've shown me to not think that.
Yeah, I feel like every year, or at least most years in March Madness, there's they're clear-cut, best team, but people shy away from, having them go the distance because they call it March Madness for a reason. It is a very unpredictable tournament, although there is standout teams. But I think this year you can say Gonzaga with a little bit of certainty, if you will. Obviously, there's no certainty in March Madness, but as you just mentioned, they're just head and shoulders above everyone else. Most of their wins have been blowouts. There's a reason we all picked them here.
Yeah. So it's easy to say our best bet. I mean, at least in this region, to get to the Final Four, our best bet is Gonzaga, and bar none, right? All of us are on the same page. Just in the tournament in general, like, do you think if it was anybody or the field, I think you guys both would say it's Gonzaga too, right? Like that's how high we think of this team going into it.
I mean, that's how it feels for me. I think there's probably 5-6 teams that are cut above everybody else, but Gonzaga's definitely the top of that list. And like I said, their offense is too balanced and it's too deep where it's not one player you shut down and you're fine. Gonzaga has 5 guys they can attack you with at all times, and they can take a 15-point deficit. If they're trailing big in a game, they can erase that almost instantly with the way they play offense, the way they play defense. I love them.
Trail too often either. So
no.
They don't, bro. Not at all. So I'm super excited to watch the Zags in this tournament because as always, one of the reasons I love the tournament is the star making it can do for future NBA. This is like, I'm a big NBA draft guy in the meantime too. Like I love watching these prospects, so kind of just scoping out the guys. And on Gonzaga for this team, like Jalen Suggs looks like he's honestly like he reminds me of everything they say about Cade Cunningham should be the same thing they do with Jalen Suggs. Can do basically everything on the floor. Just they got to keep the jumper steady in the future, but Kid can do everything. He's electric for them.
Yeah, he can do everything. I mean, he can shoot, he can pass, and he plays good defense too, and that's a big thing for me, transferring him from college to the NBA.
He tries really hard on defense. Like, he goes all
absolutely.
out. Yeah.
And that's a big thing. You have to have the intensity on both sides of the floor, especially if you want to make it at the NBA level, and Suggs is the definition of that.
Yeah, that's the thing I like about this team too, is that like we know that we're not getting a team that's going to slip up and think like anything. Like they've been hurt too many times in Gonzaga. Mark Few's been too close too many times. He's not going to let them get complacent no matter how good they've been. So let's go on to talk about speaking in the vein of future NBA superstars. The guy in this bracket who you think we should be looking out for in the draft upcoming.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's Evan Mobley, the forward for USC. And I really like Mobley because, like I said, he's a hybrid big. He's 7 feet tall, but he can handle the ball. He's explosive to the rim. And he's just got to work on his outside shot, and he could really become a force in the NBA. Mobley, he is a dominant force inside the paint on offense and defense. He averages over 3 blocks a game, which in college is incredible. And I looked up a stat earlier today. Mobley has the most blocks and steals combined of any potential top 5 NBA picks since Anthony Davis. And he's built just like Anthony Davis, same body build, maybe put on a little more muscle in the next coming years, develop a three-pointer. But Mobley is a guy who I actually think could take USC deep in this tournament with the way they play.
That was the same comp that I was seeing earlier too, and just talking about the skill level. He's a 7-footer that just has guard skills, and I mean it's so hard to find dudes that just look as smooth as they do. Like he honestly, you know what he reminds me of is he reminds me of Christian Wood a lot. In the way that like he's because he's not as smooth as no one's as smooth as Anthony Davis.
No, like, I mean he's the cream of the crop.
Yeah, like that's like the peak level, but like he still has those moves. Like you see Christian Wood kind of pull that out. Who's coming back tonight actually too, and just pull those like some of those moves out. You're like, damn, like I didn't know that guy could be able to do that. And it's the same thing when you watch USC. Like he just has those moments where he just like takes over a game for a minute. And you're like, oh shit, like that would be terrifying if they can put that together. Dunny, who are you having here on this list?
I'm going in a bit of a different direction. I honestly, I think I'm seeing NBA superstar down the line. I'm not even sure if Nashawn Bones-Highland will declare for the NBA draft this year. To me, in the West region, you got Bones-Highland from VCU. He was the A10 Player of the Year. I'm going to be giving a lot of A10 love on this pod, just to get that out of the way right now.
Oh, that's all right.
He's one of the most confident players I've seen in college basketball that I've seen play in person. I had the opportunity to do so twice last season when he was a freshman. He's a sophomore this year. I believe he averaged 19 points per game. Like I said, just one of the most confident-looking players I've ever seen. He can score from just about anywhere. He has a thin frame but good length, and you wouldn't guess by the way he plays that he is thin. He plays very strong. So yeah, it's some A10 love for my pick, but it's also you got to give credit where credit's due with Bones-Highland.
I don't mind that pick at all. And VCU, they're a really good defensive team. They could actually be a tough matchup for Oregon, but we'll see.
I always think VCU just has they just always the way that they play defense and just it surprises in a one game scenario if you haven't seen anything like that all year, because there's not teams, it's conference by conference. Sometimes you don't even see just the kind of play that you get, and that's like I love the matchups. Right. And sometimes these teams just get blitzed by VCU in these years, and they're always prepared in those situations. It seems like. Yeah,
I mean, VCU has the experience. They've been there. It seems like they're in the tournament every single year, whether they get an at-large or they win the Atlantic 10. VCU is always a team you don't want to bet against.
So, Dunny, you were apologizing for trying to say that you were going to talk too much A10. Well, I'm going to take my opportunity here to talk MAC basketball because as our bracket buster, all three of us were in line. Now, I will fully admit that part of this is just my hatred towards Virginia. Like, I really just don't like Virginia at all. Like, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's why, like, I feel like they're, like, why people hated Duke in, like, the 90s, because Duke hasn't really that team. And now Virginia's kind of like that boring-ass, like, just always good. Maybe I'm off on that, but that's my feeling towards it. So I'm going with Ohio over Virginia definitely in the first round. But in the same vein as you, Dunny, I got to see Jason Preston live. Multiple times when I was at Kent State, or not multiple times, but last year I saw him live, and that dude is absolutely incredible. His story is absolutely incredible. Just coming from a prep school in Florida, playing high school ball and averaging 2 points and just kind of getting a tape out there and getting offers, like, it's just an incredible story. And that dude is electric. And I think Ohio, they're just kind of always hanging around as one of the top teams in the MAC. It's been UB dominant lately. Obviously, they've been the cream of the crop, but Ohio's always been there every one of these years, and it just seems like they're a team that's really malleable and can kind of give Virginia a lot of trouble if Virginia is caught sleeping on this weekend.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. When I watched the MAC championship this year, I underestimated Ohio coming into the game. I'm like, all right, UB, they've been playing the hottest of all the MAC schools. They should get by Ohio. And about 5 minutes into that game, I was like, the Bulls are in trouble. This Ohio team is legit. And Jason Preston, he reminds me of basically LaMelo Ball. Probably not as talented as LaMelo Ball, but plays the same style game where he's got the size at the point guard position. Why he's 6'4". He can shoot from the outside. He can drive, but he makes everyone around him so much better. Preston is making NBA type level passes already for Ohio, and he's surrounded by good outside shooters. And that's basically what you want in a Cinderella type mid-major team. Ohio's 14th in points per game and 14th in shooting percentage, which basically means they're just a balanced offensive attack, and they're going to score a lot of points. Mm-hmm. And Jason Preston, I mean, he's the leader behind the Ohio team with 5 guys who average over double-digit points. It's another one of those teams where they're balanced from top to bottom. And like I said, I'm off on Virginia too. I think I didn't like them coming into the tournament to begin with, and now they had the whole COVID pause where they're not even able to practice until tomorrow. They haven't practiced all week. They've been in self-isolation all week. And Virginia hasn't done well this year against good offensive teams, and Ohio's the definition of that. And if you look at a potential 5-12 who they would play if they beat Virginia, you got Creighton and Santa Barbara. Creighton is just the most frustrating, inconsistent team all year.
That's the Big East as a whole for me. Just watching them play each other has been crazy, trying to figure out who's good.
And Creighton makes no sense to me because they are a great shooting team, but they are one of the worst free throw shooting teams in all of college basketball. It makes no sense how you can make a 3-pointer and then you get to the line, you go for 2. And then you got Santa Barbara, who people love. And my biggest gripe with Santa Barbara, they haven't played anybody this year. They played no one in the top 100. And I mean, when you go from playing nobody to playing a team that knows what they're doing, it's tough to kind of turn it up a notch. And so I really do like Ohio to not only beat Virginia, but possibly get to the Sweet 16. And as a 13 seed, that's a big feat. And plus, there's no shame in losing to Gonzaga in the round of 16.
No, not at all.
No shame
at all. That's kind of why I took them here. I was mostly just jumping on board with you guys, but as a bracket buster, I kind of just saw it as the first round. I had kind of the same ideas as you, where Virginia, you mentioned their struggles recently, but they're also one of the teams struggling with COVID. Yeah. And, everyone's had to go through that at different times or at the same times as other teams. But it's a legit factor in this season. And if they're not, if they haven't been practicing, if they haven't been on the floor, we mentioned kind of Ohio has been playing good basketball of late, so complete opposite. And then I feel like Ohio has a bit more of a chip on their shoulder. And when to play better with a chip on your shoulder than March Madness as an underdog. So
yeah,
that's kind of why I took them as the bracket buster here.
No, I mean, I think we're all on the same page here. I think, and I know it's maybe a little MAC bias coming from me, but Ohio opened my eyes. And when I looked into the numbers to, see if it lined up with what I was watching, it did. And when you have a guy from a major school like Jason Preston, who's an NBA type talent, it makes that team super dangerous because those players, they take their game to the next level. The mid-major guys who have that talent, this is the time for them to be in the spotlight, to be noticed. Jason Preston, I wouldn't be surprised if, first game he goes like 25 points, 8 rebounds, 10 assists, something like that. And people are like, oh, who's this guy?
Yeah, I'm fully admitting to the MAC bias on this pick, but I think it also lays out and works out. So what about a dark horse Final Four team? I think me and you here, Stevie, are on the same page, bro, because I think USC has looked good to me all year long, to be honest. Like they've been inconsistent at times, but it just seems like the talent, like their ceiling is as high as any of these like lower seeded teams in this region for sure.
Right. And I think a reason I like USC too, a lot of people, especially like the, I guess, public, I would say, they don't watch a lot of the Pac-12 games because, they're on at 11 at night. Not everybody's watching. USC's a real team, and they're not good just offense. They're good on defense too. I believe they're top 30 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. And there's only 8 teams in college basketball that can meet that criteria. And you take that with, like we talked about, Evan Mobley, who's a top 3 NBA potential pick. USC can make a deep run, but I will say too, I know they're not a dark horse, but I think everybody's picking Gonzaga. Look out for the 2 seed Iowa. I mean, Iowa played Gonzaga earlier this year. They lost by 10, but Iowa can score with Gonzaga. One of the few teams that can. Luka Garza, one of the best big men, if not the best big men in the country. It's another team I want to look out for. But USC, Iowa, on that side of the region, I think both those are great bets to get to the Elite Eight, especially with Kansas too, suffering from COVID, just like Virginia.
Yeah, for sure. Denny, what about you? Who do you have as one of your bracket busters you're looking at?
I took Oregon here. It's kind of a random pick, but mostly because I had my eyes on this VCU Oregon matchup. I think that's going to be a great game, and 2, I don't know. I like Oregon's team this year. They're the Pac-12 regular season champs. They've kind of been, dancing for, I think, 7 of the last 8 tries in the tournament. They've made it. They've had good teams recently. Nothing eye-opening or jumping off the page at you, but I don't know. It's more of a random selection, but yeah, just going with Oregon here, possibly make it to the Final Four. It would be tough. They do have to play Iowa, as you mentioned. They've been playing great ball. They can score with anyone, including Gonzaga, but going Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon's a great pick. They finished first in the Pac-12. I mean, they have, like I said, a deep roster like Oregon always does, and Oregon just always seems to play better in the tournament, and I don't think this year will be an exception. I like Oregon a lot, too.
I think you're capping, Dunny, because I think it's just because of Peyton Pritchard.
I was going to mention the anecdote, but...
I like Oregon a lot, too, because if they can get by VCU, I think Iowa is a very beatable 2 seed, at least in among all the other 2 seeds. I like Iowa, but I just think that sometimes... I think that could be a good game between either VCU and Oregon or Iowa. Like, I'm not very confident in Iowa getting by to the Sweet 16 as much as I am some of these other teams in these brackets.
Right. I mean, Iowa's biggest weakness is their defense, and basically that means anybody can hang around. If you get a hot shooting team versus Iowa, they can keep up with them. But
yeah. Exactly. That's a story with a lot of these Big Ten teams, which I'm sure we'll get into. But so we're all going Gonzaga, though. They're in our Final Four.
Yeah. I mean, it's a boring pick, but it's a smart pick, I think. Yeah. And sometimes you got to have a chalk Final Four if you want to win your bracket pools. It's not exciting, but just take Gonzaga. They haven't shown anything to not be taken.
All right, so let's go into the South region here as we are going to start off with the number 1 seed in the South region, the Baylor Bears this year. Stevie, give me the breakdown on the Baylor Bears.
So I don't want to rant about this too much, but I have never seen a number 1 seed so disrespected. Like I have the Baylor Bears.
I want you to rant. You have the floor.
It's unbelievable to me that because Baylor lost, a week after COVID to Kansas in a great game, and then lost to Oklahoma State in the semifinals of the Big 12 tournament, where Baylor shot 26% from 3 and I believe like 37% as a team. And Baylor, who normally shoots 43% from 3, which is the best in college basketball, and I believe it's like 52% from the field. Wow. It's not going to happen again. They were still in that game the whole way.
Yeah.
Everyone's out on Baylor. Everyone thinks Carolina can beat them in the second round, which I think is just blasphemous because North Carolina doesn't have any guards.
The fact that North Carolina's an 8 seed to me is just ridiculous in the first place. Like the fact that Michigan State's in the first 4 and they got North Carolina as an 8. Like it's pure just reputation.
I usually like Carolina, but they play one good game and everyone wants to pick them as their sleeper team to the Final Four. I just don't get it. Baylor has 3 guards: Davion Mitchell, Maceo Teague, and Jared Butler, that are all elite. And in my opinion, that's the best trio of guards in all of college basketball. They can shoot from 3, all 3 of them. They all play good defense. And Baylor forces 17.3 turnovers a game, which is the highest of all Major 5 conferences. Another stat that I love, too, is Baylor has won their games by, I believe it was 18 points a game. The next highest of the Major 5 schools is Illinois. Everyone's darling Illinois at 12 points. So Baylor has 6 more points a game they've won by, and people just forget that. It's like the first 25 games of the season haven't happened, and people are looking at the small sample size after their, COVID pause. And that's fine, but do not doubt Baylor. I know Scott Drew has screwed people over in the past. I know everyone trusts Baylor, and then they lose in the first round. But this Baylor team's different. I love their guards. I love everything they can do, and they're not going to live or die by the 3 because they play great defense, and they force their opponents into mistakes. And when you do that, I'm going to trust you. And I think this region is the weakest of the 4. So I hate being chalk again, but I'm writing Baylor right into the Final Four. I think it's a good pick because I don't think everybody's on them. I think people are just doubting Baylor for no logical reason.
Yeah,
Donnie, you got Baylor too here?
I do, and I agree with Stevie said there because I think I think a lot of the time, especially right before the tournament, people are quick to judge just based off of what they've seen recently. Because I guess in college basketball opposed to the NBA, that is a little more important, but we've talked about it a couple of times now. It's a COVID season. Obviously, their struggles came, after an issue with COVID. And, before, I want to say, 3-4 weeks ago, all the talk about, favorites to win the national title was Baylor and Gonzaga were head and shoulders above everyone else. It was always Baylor and Gonzaga. And then slowly you started to hear less and less about Baylor. And then you started off, kind of hit the nail right on the head that they're a pretty disrespected 1 seed as it is now. It's like, the hype's just not there anymore. It's kind of been all Gonzaga. That's why it worried me a little bit to take them as the best bet, but we kind of already went over that. But I think Baylor still has that for their respected region. They just look like a more well put together basketball team than kind of everyone else around them.
Yeah, I agree. I love Baylor.
So I think either my hatred, not even hatred for Baylor, but when they wore those ugly ass jerseys in the Final Four the 1 year, bro, I've never forgiven them for that. Because you guys are sitting here and everything you're saying about Baylor is right. Like I've watched a good amount of Baylor. I think the Big 12 was probably the conference I watched the most this year, and that's usually it's never been the case for me. But the Big 12 was so good this year.
The games were incredible.
Oh, dude, they were
in the Big 12.
Like they were so competitive. Like any night you could get. All these teams. Another team in this region, Texas Tech, had some amazing games against teams this year. Texas Tech, Texas. That game, oh man, that was a great game to watch too. But I feel like that's it. It's the jerseys that just stuck in my head. But Baylor has went through all those games and found a bunch of different ways to win, in close games against West Virginia at home. In some of these matchups against Oklahoma State at home. It's just they've been able to pull through all these games and. I will tell you though, and we talked about this a little earlier. We were talking before the podcast. The thing that worried me, and maybe that is the recency bias that you were talking about, Dunny, but seeing them miss all those threes against a good team like Oklahoma State just has me worried for if they end up in the Elite Eight against Ohio State. Because my pick here is Ohio State, and I'm really very aware that
I'll get to them.
I'm a little scared about it because their defense is absolutely atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. But this is more a pick of, I have a couple candidates always in the bracket of dudes that can just take over for 3 weeks. And if Kyle Young comes back and he's healthy, that's a dude that could take over for 3 weeks and just if he in the Elite Eight, he goes off, for 35 and 14 or something like that on Baylor. Like that's the kind of scenario I'm going with Ohio State. But I want to hear your piece on Ohio State, because I know that they have a lot of flaws coming out of this.
So it's pretty funny. So I always do like an initial bracket. Like when it first comes out, I just go with my gut. I don't look at anything. I just write in teams. And I had Ohio State in the Elite Eight. I started looking into the game more, and they're playing a 15-seed Oral Roberts. I bet no one has heard of Oral Roberts. And what I love about Oral Roberts is what they do well is what Ohio State is bad at. Ohio State's, biggest, I guess, flaws are their perimeter defense, their overall defense.
Dude,
turning it over
against Illinois on Sunday, just seeing those guards just destroy them for that first half of that game is unreal. It was unreal.
Well, and that's the thing. Oral Roberts makes the most threes per game out of anybody. They have the best free throw percentage out of anybody, which is a huge stat for me come March, because when the games get really pressure filled, you got to make the clutch shots. Oral Roberts is knocking down their freebies, and that's big for mid-major schools because a lot of them struggle with them.
And then country's leading scorer too.
Yeah, they do. His name, I believe,
I don't feel as confident.
It's Max Abmas, and he averages 3.8 threes a game. He's shooting 8 threes a game. If he gets hot, he can put up 35 points on this Ohio State defense. And not only that,
% from deep too. He's not just taking a bunch. He's
making them.
Yeah.
And the biggest one too for Oral Roberts, they don't turn the ball over. And when you have a mid-major school that can shoot threes, make their free throws, and not turn the ball over, that's a recipe for a huge upset. And they're playing Ohio State, who I like. I've liked them all year. I think they're a great school. But their biggest weakness is perimeter defense, and that's Oral Roberts' biggest strength. So I have my sleeper team or my bracket buster team, Oral Roberts, because for 2 reasons. One, I think everybody's going to be picking Ohio State deep because this region's kind of weak, and for some reason people don't like Baylor. And I think Oral Roberts can give Ohio State a game. Oral Roberts already this year played Oklahoma State down to the wire. They led Arkansas by 10 at half, and that game, it became a 10-point game at the end, but it was close for a while. Played Wichita State, another tournament team, down to the wire. Oral Roberts has proven they can play with the best teams, and they have the talent to actually score, and that's what I look for in these Cinderella teams. I want to see offense more than defense, because if these Cinderella teams get hot, anything can happen. This is March Madness.
This whole conversation just gave me a lot of CJ McCollum Lehigh vibes, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm getting really scared of Ohio State. I already turned in a bracket with them in it, so hopefully that one maybe not work out as bad. I do remember that year I had Michigan State and Duke in the Final Four, I think against each other, or in the championship game against each other, and I came home. I was at a hockey tournament and I played a game, and I came back and saw that they had both lost, and that was not an ideal time. So maybe I might be out on Ohio State, but let's jump around here quick, because the thing about going with Ohio State or going with anybody but Baylor in this region, it's hard because we were talking about it earlier. It's just the teams from including Ohio State, from the 2 seed all the way up through the 9, the single digit seeds. None of them are really jumping out on the page for any of us. Is there any of these teams that you think could make a run and give Baylor a run in this region besides the Buckeyes?
I'll say the 3 seed Arkansas. They got an NBA prospect in Moses Moody, who is incredible. He's 6'6", got great size. He can shoot from 3. He scores a lot. He can drive. He's athletic. But the big thing about him, he's a dog on defense. And Arkansas has been probably one of the top 5 hottest teams in college basketball over the past month or so, I'd say. They can shoot, they want to speed you up, and they play very intense on both sides. Their coach, high intensity, and the players play up to it. And I think Arkansas, I hated them to start the year. I called them frauds a couple months ago, and after I did that, they beat 4 straight ranked teams, and I was like, maybe they're pretty good. Started watching their games. I actually kind of like Arkansas. Now, do I think they'll beat Baylor? I'm torn. I think they can give Baylor a good game, but like I said, if I'm having Oral Roberts with the upset of the whole tournament beating Ohio State in the first round, I gotta pick an actual good team to come out the bottom half of the region. So I like Arkansas Razorbacks to actually make some noise.
So I'll touch on Moody a little bit because I've been looking at guys in the draft for the Cavs, and the Cavs still need a wing. So I've just been looking at the 3-and-D wings kind of in that range. And between him and honestly, I think he's the favorite between him and Scotty Barnes there. I really like what both those guys bring to the table, but specifically with Moody, like it just seems like he has everything you would want in an NBA, like not to be maybe not a superstar in the league, but just a guy that you can plug, kind of like Halliburton this year coming out from Iowa State. Like he can literally just do everything on the floor. Like he's going to come in day one and be able to impact the game positively in the NBA. And like you said about Arkansas, if they're making it to the Elite Eight against Baylor, that game is going to be fucking crazy. That's going to be an electric shootout. Like those teams are going to be running up and down the floor. Like that's, I think, the most enjoyable.
That's going to be like first to 100 wins, but it's also going to be like 30 turnovers a side because they're both going to be in your face guarding you the whole time. I think that'd be a great game.
That would be a good one. What about you, Donnie? Any of these lower seeds popping out to you at all? Like anybody that you kind of jumping on here?
Not entirely. I just really like the Oral Roberts pick over Ohio State too. I feel like mostly because like I feel like they just, like Stevie mentioned it, no one's heard of them, right? And then they also just kind of have that, like they have the name, like Oral Roberts. I feel like all the upset teams ever, especially when the seedings are like this much of a difference between a 2 and a 15 seed. Like I feel like it's just always like a bizarre name. Oral Roberts doesn't even sound like a basketball school or like a school in general. It sounds like a dental office or something. So I think when I had to take a bracket buster, I was like, dude, that just made the most sense to me. And then once I start to see some buzz on Twitter about them, and they have the country's leading scorer, I was like, this is kind of just all aligning right now for me. So that's definitely who I took. But for as far as someone who I'm ready to see in the NBA from this region, a lot of these for me, when we go through the regions, these picks are homer picks, but I got to go with someone else that I just love as a player, and that's Mac McClung. I don't know if he's will ever reach superstar level in the NBA, but he kind of reminds me of a more polished Grayson Allen was at Duke. Obviously, a little more explosive, but I've just loved watching him play since high school. And his 3-point shot isn't great. It hasn't been great in college, but it does improve slightly every year since he's been in college basketball. He's a junior now, and I just feel like all his mechanics are just they can easily translate to the next level. Like he's one of those guys who jumps really high on his jump shot. He obviously attacks the rim and does not matter who's standing under the basket. And those guys going into the NBA are kind of just pick up on the little things quickly because their athleticism allows them to. So I'm definitely excited to see Mac play at the next level.
Yeah, so you guys are on Baylor. I think I'm going to be on Baylor now. I don't know what I'm going to fill out some of that. I don't know what I'm going to do. There's really nobody else. Maybe I'll just do Arkansas. They'll be the only other team at this point because I don't trust Villanova at all this year. I've never trust Purdue in general. And there's just really not I wish Florida is interesting to me, but they just because I like the talent on Florida, like USC, it's kind of the same vein. Like the ceiling of Florida is amazing, but Florida is not put together at all this year.
Florida's the most inconsistent team I think I've seen all year. But what I will say about Purdue is Purdue does fit that criteria of their top 25 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. They're good on both sides, and they have the biggest size, one of the biggest teams in college basketball, so they can dominate boards. They can get you the extra possessions. I don't love Purdue just because they break my heart every year I take them. But Purdue is definitely a team that could make some noise, especially since their potential second round matchup would be Villanova, who lost Colin Gillespie for the year. And it's very hard to trust Villanova now when you lose your best player who basically handles the ball the majority of the trips down the court.
That's my bracket buster pick. If you guys are on Oral Roberts, I'm on Winthrop because I didn't even need to know anything about Winthrop this year. I saw 23-1, and I love picking the upset teams of the teams that are like 27-1 in some small conference, because then like they might not have the competition, whatever, but that team knows how to fucking win and put together, and they're not used to losing. Yeah, like Winthrop's gonna come out there and think they're gonna look at that Villanova team, especially this Villanova team this year, and be like, we should beat these guys like 100%. That's how they're gonna walk into that game.
And Winthrop too, they killed the teams in the Big South.
Yeah,
they didn't just win the Big South. They dominated the Big South. Winthrop, they can score, which is one thing I love for mid-major teams. They can shoot from the line. They can shoot from outside. They haven't played anybody this year, which is why I'm terrified of picking a team like that. But like you said, I mean, their mindset when you're 23-1, you're like, we can beat anybody. Now you see Villanova loses their star player, like, hey, they're vulnerable. We can take them out. And I don't hate that pick at all. Winthrop, I think they'll be a very popular 12-seed upset people pick this year.
So let's go on to the Midwest here. We'll go down with Illinois as the 1 seed. They won the Big Ten championship in overtime on Sunday, and I think that probably propelled them up to the 1 line, because I was thinking, maybe, I don't know. I was thinking maybe, I guess there's not really a better candidate at number 2 at the 2 seeds right now. Maybe Alabama if they wanted to do that, but Illinois has been pretty solid all year long in a tough Big Ten. How did you feel about Illinois in the Big Ten this year?
I loved Illinois. It was interesting too, because they were another team I was kind of concerned about midway through the season, because I don't think they have depth. I love Kofi Cockburn. I love Ayo Dosunmu. They're phenomenal players, probably 2 of the top 10 best players in all of college basketball, but they don't have much depth. And then when Dosunmu went out with a facial injury, just the role players at Illinois stepped up to another level. And right now they look basically unbeatable. They're top 7 in offensive and defensive efficiency. They have the role players that can shoot. They have the role players that can play defense. And like I said, I'm not betting against Ayo Dosunmu wearing that Batman type mask. He is an absolute demon out there on the court. He can do anything. And that's a team, I know it's a popular pick. People love them. But this is a team that, they look like a championship team right now, and they have looked that way since his injury, since he came back, and they're the hottest team in college basketball right now, without question. They've won 7 straight games, 6 of those wins over tournament teams. They steamrolled Michigan in Michigan, beat Iowa, and beat Ohio State twice. I think that was the big eye-opener game when Illinois just crushed Michigan on the road. Everyone thought Michigan was, probably the team to give Gonzaga the biggest challenge. Illinois comes in, wins by 20, and everyone's like, "Oh, we should pay attention to this team."
Yeah, it seems like they've been able to just be like they've looked like a threat all year as a team that when they figured it out, it was going to be scary for the rest of college basketball. I think earlier in the year, when we were talking about Gonzaga and Baylor being kind of the clear top 2, it seemed like they were the team that was consistently in that conversation of the other team trying to join along inside there. But the rest of the region, so I'm assuming, Stevie, you're going with Illinois here then, right? That's your pick for the region then? Is that I have a strong about them?
Like I said, this year, I think there's 5 or 6 teams just a cut above everybody else. And so I'm doing more kind of second round, Sweet 16 type of upsets, and I'm going a very chalk Final Four. I look at Illinois, I look at what they've done. And like I said, depth was their biggest like concern for me midway through the season. When DeSumo went out, the role players stepped up to another level. And since DeSumo's been back, I mean, guys like DeMonte Williams, Trent Frazier, they're still playing to that level. They have 5 guys now that can just do anything. And another thing, too, with Illinois, why I love them, it's very hard for any team to match up with Kofi Cockburn inside. He's 7 foot, 250. The guy's built like a fridge, and you're not getting boards on him. He's backing you down consistently. And when you have 2 superstar players on the same team, and now they have the role players gelling together, it's very hard for me to not see them make a deep run.
I do think they got screwed in this 8-9 with this 8-9 that they got, because they're either going to get Loyola, who is going to be loving the chance to beat the in-state Big 10 school.
And Sister Jean's in attendance
She's
this
there.
year. She's back.
Oh my God. Or they have to play Georgia Tech, who just won the ACC. And I mean, they look like they were on a mission on Saturday night again. Like they look like they're kind of like a complete team under Joe Passner there. So that's a tough draw in the second round. And then my pick in this region, the Oklahoma State Cowboys and Cade Cunningham in the Sweet 16. I think that game is going to be, if we get Illinois Oklahoma State, like that might be my favorite game of the Sweet 16, just because I think that could be some incredible shot making and just drama between those two teams.
Yeah, I'm with you there, and it's mostly just because of the Cade Cunningham hype. I just, obviously a lot of it is hype, and it's kind of just the easy name to pick. He's the guy who is projected probably to go top 2 in the NBA draft. He looks like a clear-cut best talent in college basketball. So yeah, it's kind of like a hype pick for me for Oklahoma State, but it's also like, if a guy like Cade gets hot, he's one of few players who can almost carry a team by himself in this type of March Madness tournament.
Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma State's a great pick. I think it's going to be a very popular pick because everybody have fallen in love with them with their little run the past couple of weeks. And like I said,
just the way Cade's been playing too.
Cade has taken his game to the next level in the past month. I mean, he has taken over games, and he can do everything, which is another reason why I love Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, and that's so. I mean, most likely NBA superstar for me out of this is obviously Cade Cunningham. Yeah. I'll give myself at least a little bit of the credit here, because Cade Cunningham has been on my radar for a couple of years now, since he's been in high school. I mean, I think everybody's NBA radar. He's been the talk of being an NBA prospect since he was coming out. Like, everybody knew this is surefire, probably top 5 pick no matter what. It was a little surprised that he went to Oklahoma State in the first place. Honestly, it was an interesting decision, but it's looking like it's working out for him. He's getting the touches and reps that he wants. They're a good squad, and I just think with him, dude, like the sky's the limit. There's only like a couple guys that I like buy in on all the time with the NBA draft, because I love the draft, but people don't understand how hit or miss the draft can just be, just situations and fit and everything like that. But with this dude, he reminds me, and not just because they went to like same school, similar build, like everything like that, but he could be a better offensive like Ben Simmons, and maybe not as much of a defensive presence as Simmons is, because Simmons is, I think, top 3 defender in the NBA right now. I don't know if Cade Cunningham has that kind of impact, but the way he can move in transition, the way he can control the game at the size that he is, and he has a much better jumper than Ben Simmons has ever shown. Yeah. But it's still not as consistent as I want it to be. So but he always finds a way to affect the game if the jumper's not hitting. He'll get passing and get other teammates involved. He'll start driving and draw contact. Like, he's willing to do anything and everything. Like, he's a true Swiss Army knife on the floor, and I think that's going to be huge in the NBA because he's so talented, and if he can just accentuate all those skills and build on it, he's going to be damn near unstoppable.
Yeah, He kind of reminds me almost like Luka Doncic a little bit.
Mhm.
Maybe not the talent Luka is right now, but I mean, he could do everything Luka can, maybe slightly more athletic, but he makes the passes and he makes everyone around him so much better. I mean, Cade gets guys wide open, and you could just tell, too, he's got the intensity where the players just play better around him. Oklahoma State was projected to finish dead last in the Big 12 in the preseason rankings. And now look at them. They're a 4 seed in the tournament. And I think a lot of that has to do with Cade and just how he's been playing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I had Cade for my, most likely to transfer over to the NBA or superstar in the NBA, whatever you want to call. But I also wanted to give, just to mix it up, and we're not talking about Cade the entire time, Quentin Grimes from Houston. He kind of already has NBA body. He's talk about people built like a fridge. He's obviously not as tall.
That dude can be playing in the league yesterday, like 100%.
Yeah, like he's built like Semi Ojeleye, but can score, a lot better than Semi.
I hope so,
and I know that better than most. But yeah, he's over 40% shooting from three, averages 18 a game. I don't know. I watched a few Houston games and. He really stood out to me, so I just wanted to give him his love while we're, obviously blasting Cade, who's probably going to go 1 or 2 in the NBA draft.
Yeah.
And I think that's a team not to sleep on is Houston Cougars. Their metrics-wise, they are one of the best. They've only played 2 tournament teams all year, which is a little concerning. They beat up on Texas Tech and they played Wichita State. But Houston, offense and defense, like I said, they force you into mistakes. They don't turn the ball over. Houston makes great shots. Houston is a very dangerous team that I think a lot of people are sleeping on just because, no one's watched them play. Who's been watching the American this year? It's been a down year. There's only 2 teams in the tournament from there. But Houston, they could make a deep run, and I would not be surprised.
This is the thing about this region in general. I think it's either the Midwest or the East is the most loaded region for me. I like the teams, at least the high seeds, but this one specifically, like from Illinois, Houston, West Virginia, I could see making a Final Four run. Oklahoma State, obviously, we talked about them. Tennessee is one of those frustrating SEC teams where the ceiling's there, but they're just so inconsistent. But San Diego State is. I talked about Gonzaga being the team on the revenge tour. San Diego State is still on the revenge tour from last year, too. They were electric last year, one of the best teams in the country. And this year, they've still been pretty good. Obviously not the height of this year, but they also didn't get to have the games that they wanted to play this year to show that on a national level like they had the last year.
Right. I mean, San Diego State, no one's watched them because, like I said, they're in the Mountain West. People don't really, pay attention to those conferences. But San Diego State,
want to give them credit last year when they were undefeated. So
exactly, and same thing with the teams I fall in love with in the tournament this year. San Diego State, I want you to be good on both offense and defense. San Diego State is. San Diego State has a great outside game. They force over 15 turnovers a game to their opponents, which I love. And the big thing about San Diego State, they're coming in on a 14-game win streak. They're playing their best basketball of the year. They could just keep it rolling, and I could see them get probably to the Elite 8.
Yeah, that's actually why I took San Diego State. I mean, I was going to take someone else for my dark horse, and then I saw the 14-game win streak thing, and I just hate in sports sometimes when people say like a team's peak too early or they get hot at the wrong times, and people even say like, oh, the team's like almost too hot going into the tournament. It's I don't buy that. It's like why would you not like if you're so used to winning? It's kind of the same thing we're talking about. When a team's 24-1 or 26-2, whatever it is, they're not used to losing. They've been doing so much winning, and that's just their mindset. And then going into win or go home games, that just made the most sense to me. Like, why not? Let's keep it rolling.
I mean, why would you pick a team that's losing 6 straight over a team that's winning 10 straight coming in? Take the hot team. And San Diego State, too, they have a player, Jordan Shackle, who shoots 48% from the field, 91% from the free throw line, and 47% from 3. He doesn't miss. It's essentially what it is. And when you have a player like that and it's built around a great team, I love the Aztecs. And they're playing Syracuse in round 1, which is probably going to be a lot of people's popular upset pick because, you see the big school name Syracuse, like, an 11 seed Syracuse, I'll take them. That'll be an upset. San Diego State does two things that are great against Syracuse teams in that 2-3 zone. They play good defense and they shoot the three ball well. Yep. That's how you beat Syracuse, and San Diego State elite in both categories.
Syracuse, another one of those teams that I don't know how they snuck it and had to play a first 4 game. I really thought they were a lock for that.
Yeah, I was shocked when I saw they didn't have a first 4.
Oh man, they somehow they always manage it. But yeah, that just that little portion of the Midwest region has the most potential, I think. I think West Virginia, I really liked all year long. And then just a second round match between either West Virginia and Syracuse, if somehow they pull it out. But West Virginia, San Diego State is going to be an amazing second round matchup if those two go head to head.
Well, yeah, we haven't even mentioned West Virginia, and they're the team that gave Gonzaga their closest game all year. West Virginia was the only team that was basically leading Gonzaga the majority of the way.
And they gave Baylor a run only a couple weeks ago, too. Had Baylor right down to the wire.
Oh, that was a heartbreak for West Virginia to lose that game in overtime. That was tough. Brutal. But West Virginia, I love them. Miles McBride, another do-it-all guard. I love the guards that can do everything. That can shoot, that can pass, that can rebound, that play defense. And then you got Culver on the inside. I love West Virginia. I love San Diego State, too. So I've been probably back and forth. I've switched that pick about 50 times already between those two.
Currently, my lead eight in this region is Oklahoma State, San Diego State, because I just think those. I always have in my brackets, no matter what, it never fails, and I always try to pick one region where I'm just going a little off kilter from the top seeds. Everybody's generally, especially in contests, if you're thinking about it that way too, people are always going to gravitate towards names and bigger seeds, and then popular upsets. And I just feel like this is where you can kind of get the value of. You've got teams loaded throughout that are 4 to 8 seeds in here, and that's what we can talk about here because we've got both of our bracket busters come from the 8-9 seed, and it would be an Illinois upset happening. But you guys are both heavy on Georgia Tech here, Dunny. What made you go with Georgia Tech, and then Stevie give yours thing here because I'm all aboard with Sister Jean. I'm riding out with Sister Jean too.
I honestly think Georgia Tech was just a random bracket buster for me. I don't know. I had a bit of trouble with the bracket buster. So Stevie, why don't you take this one for me?
So there's a couple of reasons why I love Georgia Tech. The first thing is they've won 8 straight. They're playing their best basketball all year, and they force their opponents into mistakes. And if you look at the 1 seed, because I don't think Drexel's beaten Illinois in any world, but if you look at who they'd be playing, they play Illinois. Illinois' basically their only weakness is turnovers. Illinois, I think they average 13 turnovers a game, which is 170th in college basketball. And Georgia Tech has been forcing their opponents to mistake. I believe they're top 20 in turnovers forced a game. And if you look at the ACC championship, Florida State shot 56% from the field. They shot very well from 3 as well. They lost that game. Part of the reason Georgia Tech forced 25 turnovers against them. Their defense is taken up to another level. And when you have that, Georgia Tech's got a good offense. They got 3 players that average over 15 a game. They can score. When their defense is forcing turnovers at the rate they have the past month, they can beat anybody. And Illinois, like I said, their biggest weakness, they turn the ball over, and they can get turnover happy. Georgia Tech gets by Loyola, who is a great defensive team. Not the best offensive team. They play very slow pace. Georgia Tech can speed them up, maybe force them into mistakes. They have a great second-round matchup versus Illinois. It's a great matchup for Georgia Tech, and it scares me because I love Illinois to make a deep run. But Illinois can get mistake-prone, and Georgia Tech will capitalize on that.
Georgia Tech, I just like that. Well, I only really watched that game Saturday night of Georgia Tech in the ACC tournament championship game, but they just look like a team. And the way you described it kind of reinforced that for me. They can just come out in any scenario, and just one of those teams, they're going to be ready no matter what that scenario is. And Illinois is not the talent of Illinois is not going to phase them at all if they get into that match at all. And certainly Sister Jean's not going to phase them at all. I'm sure they're pissed that they're the 9 and not the 8 in that game going forward. Just the way that those guys are kind of built, I feel like they are probably feel disrespected that Loyola is ahead of them. But Loyola is a team that is just. Man, they're just consistently they're just so solid now. It's crazy. It was crazy to see them back in this position again this year.
Yeah. I feel like if you're reasoning Sister Jean for them being a bracket buster, that's just fair.
Yeah, that she is mostly the reason I couldn't pick against her.
And not only Sister Jean, they have the number one defense in college basketball. I mean, that helps.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think
less important than Sister Jean. But,
yeah, just a little bit.
It's right there.
Well, like I said, this 8-9 matchup is brutal. I think they were both very underseeded. I don't know how
they just
Loyola
wanted
got
the matchup.
8.
We talked about this a little bit. This bracket is littered. And when we get to the East region, trust me, this is the East region shows me how bad they did this for TV, because I will go into every single matchup here.
There's 7 teams I love in the East. I don't know how they balanced the regions the way they did.
You want to know what if you're East region? Do you want? We can get into
go
this. No, go on your thing, and I'll go on my rant, because I noticed this while we were doing this, and it caught me.
I just don't understand how they balanced the regions this year. The seeding to me was all right, but just the regions. There were 7-8 teams in the East I think can go to the Final Four. Mm-hmm. And then you have Illinois, who's probably been playing the best basketball here in the Midwest, and they're like, all right, your second round matchups against Loyola Chicago or Georgia Tech. All right.
Good luck.
So CBS definitely just wanted to recoup some money for this March Madness tournament and get the juiciest thing. Because if you look at Wiz, we move on to the East region. Your number one overall seed, the Michigan Wolverines. Now I want you to get the trend here. Michigan Wolverines normally have been a great basketball school. What would you normally recognize them as, though? Football school, right?
Yeah,
everybody talks Michigan football. So let's move down. Let's move down the bracket here. The Alabama Crimson Tide football school. The Texas Longhorns football school. The Florida State Seminoles football school. Colorado, you can put it up in the air. Definitely more football school. BYU football school. LSU 8 seed football school. They put all the high football school teams basically in one region. Like their dream is Michigan, Florida State, Alabama, Texas, and random grandmas that don't know anything are just like, oh, it's Alabama, Texas. They know these fucking teams, and that's how I think they decided this East region. I really don't see how they did it any other way.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that. That's great.
It would be like the best weekend of college football is how you could end up with some of these games. It's just nuts.
I think for everything they did for the regions, they were just hoping and thinking that everyone wouldn't notice, because we had a year off of March Madness.
Exactly.
Like, we can literally do this however we want, and no one will notice.
I still can't get over how stacked the East region is. Mm-hmm. There were so many of these teams were like going to be my sleeper, can make a Final Four run. Love Colorado, love Florida State, love Connecticut. They're all in the same region. And then you have Alabama, Texas, and Michigan, some of my favorite high seeds. I'm like, who do I pick here?
Mm. And Stevie, you were talking about yesterday when we spoke that St. Bonnie's is one of the most complete teams in the tournament.
Well, that's the thing. This is another 8-9, just like the Midwest, where both teams I think are so underseeded, and I don't know who to pick. You got LSU, who is the number 5 offense in all college basketball. They can score with anybody. They got 3 freak athletes that can all score from the outside, inside. And they're facing St. Bonaventure that not a lot of people follow too much. Like I said, they're from the Atlantic 10. St. Bonaventure does not make mistakes. No. They don't turn the ball over. They don't take bad shots. And they're very good on offense. They're very good on defense. They can rebound the ball. They're a great passing team. They're balanced all the way around. The biggest hole with St. Bonaventure, they have no bench depth. I mean, none whatsoever. Yeah. They have the worst bench probably in any team in the tournament. But that starting 5 from Bonnie's, man, they could play with anybody.
That's like part of this region in general. With Bonaventure, like when I saw VCU come up as 10 on the bracket, I thought VCU was underseeded after watching them this year. So I was like, okay, well, if VCU's 10, then where are they going to put Bonnie? Because I figured it was going to be like 6 or 7 for both those teams, just the way that they were all year. And they clearly they didn't want to put those teams up in the A10, up in the higher seeds. The
A10 gets no love, man.
Yeah, man. It was unreal. I was just very surprised.
I always project the seeds like before Selection Sunday. I love doing that. I had LSU as a 6 and Bonnie's at a 7. So when I saw they both got 2 seeds lower, I was like, this is the most brutal 8-9 you could have came up with.
But, seeding aside, you touched on it. I think I've said this a couple of times, but I think this actually might be my favorite first round matchup, or at least maybe one of the. Going into it, you can say this is probably going to be one of the closely contested games of the first round.
Yeah, this is must-watch television. LSU Bonnie's is going to be – I mean, most of these first round matchups are incredible in this region. But yeah, Bonnie's LSU. Like I said, I feel bad for Michigan. Just like Illinois, they have to play the winner of this 8-9.
Yeah, Gonzaga. They really did. They did Baylor and Gonzaga favors with their 8-9 matchups compared to what the other 2 1 seeds have to deal with.
Without question.
Yeah.
Without question. You have Gonzaga, who's playing 2 8-9s that are both just reeling as of late, can't get out of their own way. Baylor's facing 2 8-9s that just don't have any guards that can keep up with their guards. And then Michigan and Illinois are playing 4 schools that could beat anybody in this bracket. So
yeah,
it's
tough. A tough pull. So I'm riding with Michigan, the 1 seed here, and this is my best bet for here. I've watched a bunch of Michigan this year. I think that they're just solid all around. There's games where they just sometimes, I don't know what happens to them. It just looks like they just a couple of their losses have been kind of dumbfounding to me how they occurred. But I think they're a team that can play with anybody in the country and get up for those games. And I love Juwan Howard. I think he's going to have – I really think there was a report today about him getting NBA coach buzz after the year. I don't know if he wants to even do that or not, but he was coaching in the NBA a little bit. I just think he's one of the best coaches in college basketball. And when you have an asset like that on the bench and a squad like they have in Michigan, that's a dangerous team in March.
Yeah, the only thing that scares me off Michigan is the injury to Livers. I mean, you're losing 13 points, 6 rebounds, and a key guy who is arguably one of, if not their best player. That's a tough loss. And like I said, I just think the road for Michigan is so tough. But you can't say anything wrong about Michigan. Michigan's a phenomenal team. They have been all year. They're a team that's great on both sides of the ball, and if there's anyone that knows how to win when it matters in March, it's Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going with good old Nate Oates and the Alabama Crimson Tide. You can call it Buffalo bias. I see the Buffalo fans, they either hate or love Nate Oates. I'm in the love department because I think he built our program. I think he's a phenomenal head coach, and it's hard for me to justify him staying in upstate New York at a MAC school and turning down like $2 million more for an SEC school. So, when he left, I was like, all right, I understand. But he has turned this Alabama team into, I think, one of the most dangerous teams in the tournament, where their ceiling is as high as anybody's, potentially good enough to beat Gonzaga. Alabama, the biggest gripe about them is they live and die by the 3, which is fine. They take 32 threes a game, which is the most in college basketball. But they make 11, and if it was just that, I would understand why people are scared off them. But Alabama has the second best defense in college basketball. Alabama forces you into mistakes, and they somehow have that good of a defense while playing at the 7th fastest pace. I mean, they'll speed you up, but you still can't score on them, which basically means no lead safe against Alabama. It can be 20 points, they'll come back. It could be 15 points, they'll come back. And they also have players that can do everything. I mean, Alabama is one of the most athletic teams, if not the most athletic team in all of college basketball. They're going to dunk on you. They're going to shoot threes in your face that you don't even think were great looks, and they'll drain them. And they're going to gain all the momentum.
They are one of the most athletic teams in this.
Well, that's the thing. Alabama's a football school. It looks like they recruited football-type athletes. I mean, these guys are unbelievable. They dominate the glass.
Is one of my favorite basketball players.
I love Herb Jones.
He had a poster dunk against LSU, and I was I thought I was looking at LeBron James or something. Like the way he cocked it back, it looked like he'd done it a million times. I was like, oh my god.
And in my opinion, Herb Jones is probably the best defender, on-ball defender in college basketball. You cannot get by him. You cannot drive on this man. And then you put him with Jaden Shacklefield, who can shoot the ball from anywhere. John Petty, who basically can do anything you ask him to do. I love Alabama. It might be a little Nate Oates bias, but like I said, when you have a team that plays at that type of tempo, that type of pace, it's so hard to keep up with that for 40 minutes. And then you have the second best defense in all of college basketball with that. I'll live and die by the 3 by Bama, because you know what? If they go 5 of 30, their defense can still win you the game. If Bama goes 15 of 30, they're not losing, no matter who they're playing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ride with Bama.
Yeah, I took Bama here also, and obviously the number 2 ranked defense stands out at you. But my thing, and especially, I got a lot from that game against LSU the other Sunday afternoon. They just look like they can play any style of basketball.
Yeah.
You mentioned they play fast, but I feel like they can match any team style and they'll beat them at their own style. But their best style basketball, you mentioned they shoot the most threes. It seems like they have confident ball handlers and they just like to dribble, drive, find the 3-point line, and that's what wins games in March Madness.
Absolutely.
In this tournament. And you mesh that with one of the most intense coaches in college basketball. It's really just a good recipe for success. They obviously have an easier route than Michigan here, I think, if you're looking at this region. So I think just certain, kind of lucky, but kind of things are just falling Alabama's way in this East region that we mentioned is going to be really tough.
Well, that's the thing, too. I mean, Nate Oates is taking the system he built with Buffalo and just transferred to Alabama. Yeah. They aren't afraid to take the best look if it's 4 seconds into the shot clock. They will shoot that early, but they'll also run an offense and take a good look on you. I mean, Alabama they can do everything. And Nate Oates had good Buffalo teams. Like, Buffalo got 2 wins under Oates in the tournament. He's got better recruits, better athletes now at Alabama. Watch out for them. That's all I'll say.
I was leaning into this on Michigan, but you guys might have talked me into picking Alabama here when we get to the final board picks. The only team I think I am convinced to not pick Michigan because the more I've been thinking about it as we were sitting here talking, I really just like Florida State as I was talking about Juwan Howard. Everything that I was saying about Juwan Howard, I was like, oh yeah, but he might have to coach against Leonard Hamilton in the Sweet 16. And Leonard Hamilton does all those things, and they also have a dude, Scotty Barnes, who, as I was saying earlier, talking about when we were talking about Moody, talking about going to the Cavs and the kind of 3-and-D guy that I want them to get. Scotty Barnes is the other guy on that list because this dude is the perfect 3-and-D guy for the NBA. He is electric in the open floor. I think his half-court offense is where he might be struggle, and he might not be as threatening in that yet. But when he's in the open floor causing havoc on defense and getting open for threes and getting to the rim, like he's damn near unstoppable sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love Florida State. I've been doing a coin flip between Florida State and Colorado. I have no idea which of those teams I want to advance at this point, but Florida State gets the same type of players every year. These tall, lengthy, athletic guys that can shoot the ball well and swarm you on defense. And I think Scotty Barnes is the definition of that.
Yeah, I believe Terrence Mann on the Los Angeles Clippers went to Florida State, and he Scotty Barnes' games kind of reminds me of Terrence Mann's.
Yep.
Now that you mention that.
And then you have Williams, who's on the Bulls now too. He's a Florida State grad who same style. I love these Florida State guys. I think the way they play at Florida State, no matter what position, they're always suited to do well in the NBA.
Yeah, gotta love that. So, Stevie, who's your NBA guy looking like from the East region?
So I'm going with James Bouknight of Connecticut. Bouknight, he's a do-it-all guard for UConn. Basically, he can play on ball, he can play off ball. He averages 19 points a game, I believe around 6 rebounds, 2 assists. He can shoot the outside shot, but his best move is just driving to the lane. He's a very, very tough to stop driving, and he's got really good size. He's 6'5". He's a freak athlete. The biggest gripe I have with Bouknight, he's just got to improve a little bit on defense. But I really do like James Bouknight. I think he has the highest ceiling of anyone in this region. He may not be the best currently, but I think his ceiling is potentially like a top 30 player in the NBA. I kind of look at him almost like a DeMar DeRozan, where James Bouknight is that type of athlete where he's a mismatch to any defender. He's just got to get a little better on the defensive end and kind of get more comfortable with his three-point shot. He can shoot threes well. He's just a little more hesitant to shoot them than certain players are right now. But I think Bouknight's ceiling is a guy, maybe a number 2 type player on any NBA team who can give you, 20 a game and rebound like 7, 8 boards. I love Book Knight.
Mm. Yeah, I think for me here, as far as, players that'll transfer to the NBA, well, I got to go with Trendon Watford of LSU.
That's a great pick.
I don't know. I'm referencing this Bama game a lot, but that was, one of the most exciting college basketball games I've at least sat down and watched in a while. And I believe he put up 30 points and 8 rebounds in that game. And I know it's kind of a weird comparison, but he kind of reminds me of Michael Beasley with just a little more consistency to him. He can shoot the ball well. He's super athletic. He has great hands. Like it almost looks like he has been in the NBA for 5 years, just underneath the basket. He can corral just about any offensive rebound or lob, finishing in traffic. Yeah, he reminds me of a more consistent, maybe a little more athletic Michael Beasley. I think he'll do great once he reaches the league.
Yeah, I like Watford a lot. Like I said, LSU Bonnie's going to be a great game. There's going to be a lot of good players in that game.
Yeah.
So, who do you guys have for your dark horse teams to get through the bracket here with the kind of mid-range seeds?
Well, I went over LSU as a team I think could give Michigan a game, but I'm going to say my dark horse. I'll go Colorado because you kind of touched on Florida State earlier. But Colorado, another team that fit that mold for me. They're top 30 in offensive and defensive efficiency. And the teams that are in that category, you got Gonzaga, Michigan, Illinois, Houston, Purdue, USC, and then Connecticut, who's another team, that could be a sleeper. But I love Colorado. They're an elite shooting team. I believe they shoot about 46% from the field. They're second in all of college basketball, 82% from the free throw line. They can shoot the 3-ball well, and they don't turn the ball over, which basically means they're, maximizing their opportunities. They're capitalizing on every possession. And then watch out for McKinley Wright. He's a senior guard. He's been there for 4 years. He has the experience. He can do everything. And I like I said, I have a bias for all these do-it-all guards, but I love those types of guys. McKinley averages over a steal per game. He averages around 5 rebounds, 5 assists, about 15 points. He can shoot the ball from 3. He can drive on you. And Colorado as a team, they're very balanced, and they play their style of basketball. They kind of force you to play how they want to play. And I watched the Pac-12 tournament. Even though they lost to Oregon State in the championship, they impressed me a lot. And they've impressed me all year long. And I love these Pac-12 teams because I think everybody's sleeping on them. Nobody's watching Pac-12 games. No one's staying up till 1 a.m. to watch, Colorado versus Arizona. I'm just going to ride with Colorado because I think everyone's pick is going to be Florida State. I'll just go the opposite way. And 2 teams I both love, like I said, I'll coin flip it, and that's how I'll determine who I pick. But I'll go with Colorado.
Dunny, who did you have here for one of your teams in the mid-range to kind of go?
Yeah, like Steve said, we kind of talked about them a lot, but Florida State, I'm going with it. I almost took Scotty Barnes for my NBA player there that we talked about, and just the rest of the Florida State team, and just the recent success in years past. It's another homer pick for me. I kind of just like the school, but I feel like it's a team that could make their way to the Final Four, and I don't know if it would surprise that many people.
No, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. And they have 5 players that all average over a 3 per game on their team too. Florida State can shoot you out of the gym whenever they want, and they're one of the most athletic teams. That's how they're always built. So I love Florida State.
Yeah, I'm going with UConn here because I think that they were. I think I was talking about a little bit earlier with the Big East. Those Big East teams just beat each other up, but UConn was the most. I don't know if it's even the most consistent, but they just looked like the most complete team to me in the Big East out of all those teams, at least in the high. And again, I keep going with the high ceiling, but like when you see the kind of games that they had this year, just the talent they have at that guard position, that's in March too. Like it's guards, man. Like it's always guards. I don't know. I like UConn. That's a tough matchup with Alabama in that second round, but I like it. They match up with Texas. If they can get past Alabama, I like their matchup with Texas and getting to the Elite Eight. And then once you're in the Elite Eight, man, like it's just one game there. So I'm kind of going with UConn here.
I mean, I love that pick too. That's what I've been saying with UConn is that I think they're the best defensive team in the Big East. And James Bouknight, you never know. We've seen UConn. We've seen the Kemba Walker run. We've seen the Shabazz Napier run. Maybe it's the James Bouknight run. Same position, take over the game, get his play to another level, and they're as dangerous as anybody. But what I will say about Texas, I wouldn't doubt Texas. I think Shaka Smart is a phenomenal coach. Jericho Sims, it looks like he's taken his play to another level where he's just owning the inside. And he's surrounded by great guards, Coleman, Ramey, Andrew Jones. These guys can all shoot. Texas is another team. Like I said, I love the East. I could pick all 7 of these teams to go to the Final Four. But
yeah. Texas is one of those teams for me. Just the last thing on here before we get to our picks at the end is Texas is one of those teams that I think, and this happens every year in the bracket, that they won the conference tournament and got bumped up a seed or two, because I thought they were more like a 5 or 4 seed coming into the weekend, and they beat Oklahoma State and ended up. And when I saw them as a 3, I mean they're good. I like Texas a lot too. I've always loved Shaka Smart and just the programs he's kind of built, and it's kind of coming together there for him a little bit. But they just seem like they're like 1 or 2 spots too high, and they could run into a buzzsaw of Alabama, and it could get ugly for them real quick there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would have actually swapped them to a 4 and Oklahoma State to a 3, even though they did beat Oklahoma State. I just think Oklahoma State, they beat 11 quad 1 teams. They have the most wins over all the good. Yeah.
All right, so let's wrap up here with our Final Four and Natty picks. So I'll start off here, and we'll go to Dunny, and then we'll end with you, Stevie, here. So you guys have convinced me to change my Final Four around on this. I'm glad that we talked through this, and I'm going to come at my bracket now with a different look. But I'm going Gonzaga, as always, from the West. I'm gonna go with Alabama in the East. I think you guys talked me into Alabama there. Also talked me into Baylor, so I'm gonna stick with that. We're gonna have a Baylor Oklahoma State Final Fours. I'm gonna stick with my pick with Cade Cunningham and the Cowboys there out of the Midwest. Gonzaga, I will have going to the Final Four no matter who I end up picking there. So Gonzaga over Alabama. And then I finally think we'll get that matchup we were supposed to get earlier in the year of Baylor and Gonzaga. If it's a Baylor-Oklahoma State Final Four, I just think Baylor will get by Oklahoma State again. And I've got Gonzaga cutting down the nets. I think it's the team of destiny this year. What about you, Dunny?
Yeah, I got a bit of a similar situation going on. We got Gonzaga, Bama, who I took. We talked about how outstanding they've been this year. I might be going a bit of a sleeper direction for the Final Four. I think I might go Arkansas here. Stevie kind of talked me into them a little bit. I kind of like the way they're looking on this bracket right now. I'm going them in the South, and then Oklahoma State. And I think we're gonna have a Gonzaga Oklahoma State, and I'm going same as you, Jake. I'm going Gonzaga doing it all. That they've haven't had a blemish on the resume yet this season, and it's a COVID year where kind of everyone's had their problems. They've managed to stay just about perfect. I see Jalen Suggs doing his thing in the Final Four, so yeah, I got to go with Gonzaga as well.
Yeah, so coming out, I got Gonzaga, Alabama in my first Final Four matchup, and then I'm going with Baylor and Illinois. I know it's boring. I know it's chalk, but like I said, these are teams I think that are just a cut above everybody else. And then I got Gonzaga and Baylor in the championship. I think a lot of people are going to have Baylor losing early. I think that's a big mistake, and I think these were the 2 best teams we thought at the start, and I don't think there's anything that's really changed my opinion. I know Illinois is red hot right now, but I'm going to trust Baylor and what they've been doing all year. And I got Gonzaga over Baylor as well. I know it's so boring to pick the number 1 overall seed that's undefeated, but I've been the high guy on Gonzaga for probably since they had Adam Morrison. I mean, my whole life, I've always loved Gonzaga. I'm like, I know they're in, the West Coast, but they're an elite team. They've so many. Sabonis. I mean, Gonzaga I love Gonzaga, and I think this is the best team that they've ever had, top to bottom. And everyone's talking about Jalen Suggs as the NBA prospect, but Corey Kispert might be the best pure shooter in all of college basketball. Mm-hmm. Gonzaga to me is just, unless a key injury down the road, I just don't know who matches up with that starting five. And I know it's boring. It's the number 1 overall seed, but sometimes you got to be boring if you want to win. I'm going to pick the Bulldogs.
Yeah. Kind of been lulling all of college basketball to sleep, but they're doing it with perfect play and just flat out being better than their opponent, and that's what it comes down to. It comes down to
right.
We'll go home, and all they've been doing is winning. So it seems like everyone else is going home.
And they already proved to us they can beat these Power 5 schools in the non-conference schedule. They didn't just beat them; they killed them all. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to keep riding with them.
Yeah.
So. All on board for the Zags. It'll be the feel-good story for the year for sure.
Yeah.
And we'll keep it locked here. My comments weren't showing up on StreamYard, so I apologize to Cullen, who was commenting nicely on here. But Cullen is here breaking news from 10 minutes ago for the NBA portion here at the end of the podcast. PJ Tucker traded, Dunny and Stevie. He is traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. PJ Tucker is now a Milwaukee Buck. Wow. The Woj trade is Houston's trade. PJ Tucker and Rodions Krooks and the Bucks first-round pick back to Milwaukee for DJ Augustine, DJ Wilson, and a 2023 unprotected first-round pick. So the Bucks loading up on defense.
First-rounder.
The Bucks now have Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, Giannis, and PJ Tucker on defense on the floor together.
That's scary. That's scary.
Terrifying.
If PJ gets his corner 3 ball back up, maybe
imagine the Giannis. The Giannis driving kicks to PJ Tucker in the corner.
Oof,
you think that's enough to slow down the Nuts?
No,
probably not. But it's in the right direction from Milwaukee. We've kind of talked about how they've been lacking and just players outside of Giannis and Middleton. And PJ Tucker's an experienced guy, a tough defender. We mentioned the corner 3 ball has been there in the past, not necessarily this year, but new scenery. Sometimes that helps shooters out. Wow.
He could work well, too, if Milwaukee wants to play small ball. If they want to match up against some teams to play small ball, he's a great stretch 5.
It's an interesting all-defense pick for them. My problem with Milwaukee, as me and Donnie have talked about a couple times on here, is that it's just when it comes to the end of the game and they're in a series against the Nets, the closers, and that PJ Tucker ain't helping them in that situation, but he might be able to help them lock down James Harden. Who knows? Maybe he's got the secret sauce for Harden.
Maybe.
Right, that'll about do it here for us today with Happy Hour Hoops. Shout out to our guy Stevie. Stevie, you want to plug your Twitter and plug your articles here before we go?
My Twitter's at Richie Stevenson. My name's Some Guy Named Steve, courtesy of Trainwreck giving me that name. I write about college basketball, and since that's slowing down, I'll probably dive into other sports, MLB, maybe a little bit on NBA. But thanks again for having me on, guys. It was a pleasure, and I can't wait to talk more about the tournament with you.
Always, man. And me and Dunny will be coming at you this weekend with our usual pregame shows, but we are going to do it for all the March Madness games, so it won't be just one game. We're just going to cover the days and just kind of go through the buzzer beaters, all the crazy shots, all the crazy dunks, anything that happens, we're going to cover it with everybody here from Trainwreck, and it's going to be fun, man. March Madness is finally back. But that is it for this episode of Happy Hour Hoops. Stay hydrated out there, y'all, and enjoy March Madness. It is finally March.
Peace, y'all.